G'day, welcome to the Financial Bloke Podcast, the podcast for people seeking the wisdom needed to grow their family's wealth and live a happier, healthier and more prosperous life. My name's Ben Law and I am the Financial Bloke. Now, I almost didn't publish this episode as I recorded it live in a room in front of 100 people, so the audio was a little echoey. But when I went back and listened, and I also got feedback from those who were there and also those that watched the live stream, I pretty much decided that the insights and commentary from the three panel guests was far too precious to leave on the cutting room floor. The episode was recorded at the 3R Beef pre-bull sale dinner, which, as I said, was about 100 people in the room and heaps of people online. And it's a new concept a mate of mine, Jeff Birchnell of 3R Beef, have been developing. Now, we had three high calibre guests, which I interviewed, as I said earlier, in like a panel type format. The guests were David Bondfield of Palgrove, Richard Reins, who was a retired meat exporter who was turning over about $500 million annually in meat sales when he retired, and Angus Street, who's the CEO of Auctions Plus. Now, the interview was tailored to the audience who were all driven, successful commercial beef producers and who were also excited about the future of the beef industry. Now, the theme of the dinner that night was collaboration and innovation. And I won't mention any more because it'll take away from the episode. So without further delay, let's kick off the Fireside Chat. G'day everyone. Yep, my name's Ben Law. I'm the Financial Bloke. And tonight we're going to go through this fairly new concept called the Fireside Chat. Now, the first thing is we're going to go for about 45 minutes. So we're also, not only are we here in the room, but we're, as Jeff said, we're also live streaming online and we're also recording. So I'll be releasing it as a podcast hopefully in the next few weeks. So if anyone listens and wants to go back and listen to some of the wisdom that's been imparted, by all means it'll be available for everyone. Now, first, thanks to Tony and Jeff and all the 3R team for putting on such a great event. And I think everyone would agree the facilities are great. There's been a lot of hard work go in, and we don't see these sort of events happening at a pre-bull sale. So this is a new thing, and hopefully we're going to be doing a lot more of it. Now, the first thing is I want to introduce everyone to the two principles that underlie the 3R brand and also the discussion tonight. And the first one's collaboration and the second one's innovation. Now, collaboration's all about relationships, which we're going to be talking about tonight. And 3R loves to collaborate with their genetic suppliers, both here and overseas, but also their customers. So that's the bull buyers. They want to have, or heifer buyers, they want to have really close relationships. We're also going to talk about innovation, and that's all about keeping ahead of the curve and using ET AI to source the best genetics, evaluation of the seed stock coming through, so feedback from their customers and also feedlot trials, and then finding unique ways to help customers of 3R Beef gain a premium price for their product. Now, the three gentlemen here today, most of you have probably all heard of them, and I'm going to be giving you a little bit of an insight into their resumes, which won't do it justice. It'll just be the highlight reels. And I think it's a real privilege to be able to get inside their minds tonight and listen to people who have something really interesting to say. Now, first cab off the rank is David Bondfield. So David and his wife Prue established one of Australia's most recognised sea stock herds, Palgrove. And most of you will know how successful Palgrove has been as a business with David and Prue at the helm, but many don't understand, and I really do, the importance of how David and Prue managed to get an international super fund to invest in their company and invest in the expansion, which I've seen many people try and do, and I've seen many people fail. So it's a significant thing to have achieved. But since stepping down as Palgrove CEO, David's now established a consulting business, much easier than being a grazier, isn't it? And providing advice on genetics, herd management and land and cattle acquisitions. Over on the far end, we've got Mr. Richard Reins. Richard grew up on a mixed farm in central west New South Wales, and his resume, by the way, is the longest of everyone. So I've cut the guts out of it, to say the least. He joined Sanger Australia, which was a meat exporting company back in 1976, and just for To give some people some context of that, I was born in 1977.
Thanks very much, Ben.
But by 2000, he owned the majority stake in the business, and he sold his equity in 2013, and it was a very large company. And in the late 1990s, I went through his resume and I said, this is a pretty good thing to achieve. He convinced McDonald's that they should use Aussie beef in their burgers in North America, and was instrumental in establishing and developing that trade. And he also helped and was influential in developing the Korean and Japanese beef markets, which not many people can say they've done. He's also still heavily involved in the ag industry or the beef industry, serving on a number of industry committees and boards, which again read like a significant resume. So I've just taken a few, such as, I know you're very keen on the Xander McDonald Award. That's very close to your heart. The Australian Export Council, the Cattle Council of Australia, the Certified Angus Group, and just, as I said, to name a few. And then we have what I'd say anyone younger than me these days is the young fella, Angus Street in the middle. Angus is a farm boy who has had a career of interesting twists and turns, which I did a fair bit of research on this Angus, and it was full of twists and turns, a bit like mine. And he's currently the CEO of Auctions Plus, which is a company I'm sure you've all heard of and probably use. He's a self-confessed tech geek, and which makes sense for being involved in Auctions Plus, and he's all about innovation, and he is a leader in the industry in his own right, but I think there's a huge future ahead for him. And so that's our three guests tonight. Now we're going to start off with something fairly simple, shall I say, to start with. And so my first question here is one for everyone to answer. And so just to be clear, Jeff and I worked through these questions to try and come up with what we thought everyone here in the room would want to hear. So now you're here tonight before a room full of people that are absolutely deeply invested in the beef cattle industry. So using your experience and your foresight into the future, in 2 minutes, which again is going to be very challenging for all of them, can you describe what the beef industry looks like to you in, say, 10 years?
First cab off. And good evening, everyone. Well, crystal balling out 10 years is probably fraught with danger, but looking at the macro picture, globally, population increase of close to 1 billion people in 10 years' time. Globally, less arable land area, and so all that comes down to a much bigger demand for protein, and in that space, beef is certainly a major player. So I think the beef industry looks very positive, just on those factors alone. I guess going forward, just recently, I'll just touch on it, but our recent FMD scare, I would assume in 10 years' time we'll have really heightened awareness of national biosecurity from a political level right down to farm level, and I'm sure we won't have the issues that may have happened that have been averted from the last one there. I think from a seed stock point of view, or for a beef producer's point of view, in 10 years' time I see the industry being less about breeds of cattle and more about genetic combinations. I think our mainstream breeds and their derivatives will be absolutely the main strength of the genetic component in the Australian beef industry. I'm sure that a lot of our decisions will be more data driven rather than built on emotive responses. In other words, less about the look and more about the function of animals that lead to profitable production. I know in 10 years' time, cattle producers and agriculturalists generally will have to have a lot more awareness about their environmental footprint, purely as a license to operate, and that'll be driven mostly by the consumer, and I think that'll be a basic minimum standard of what we do and how we do it. Will certainly be under the spotlight even more than we are now. So in less than 2 minutes, that's how I see briefly our beef industry looking. I'm game.
Thanks, Bondi. I think it was 2 minutes 30. I looked at the question from what are the technical macro trends that we should be considering as a livestock sector and an agricultural sector. And for me, I see it as digitisation 2.0. And what that means is the businesses today that have evolved over the last 3 to 5 years in the ag tech space, or the carbon tech space, or the sustainability tech space, or the food tech space, are not just going to digitise the product or the solution. An example of that is farm management software, which is, there's some fantastic farm management software apps out there. That was the old pocketbook, the old Excel, which is now a digital app. Options Plus is a great example of what I call digitisation 1.0, which is a physical sale yard, putting it in the sky and digitising it. The evolution over the next 10 years is going to be this digitisation 2.0, where businesses are thinking digitally first, and they are thinking around how can we connect the entire experience, so from a livestock perspective, the entire supply chain digitally. A great example outside of the agricultural sector is airports. Airports were once a heavy human interaction, and I was on a plane today out of Sydney, and you get to the airport, and it used to be the digital desks that you would check in. You go back 5 years ago, you used to line up and speak to somebody and check in, and you used to hand your bag over. Nowadays, when you get to the airport, you have to have checked in online. You scan the QR code from your phone, it prints out your boarding pass and your bag tag, and you drop the bag off. So how the agricultural sector evolves to completely digitise its supply chain, I think is really, really exciting. And there's companies like Options Plus, for example, where we're now considering, yes, digitisation 1.0 was a sale yard in the sky, or a digital ag market, but how can we connect the entire supply chain from farm management software, integrating with decision-making tools, integrating with compliance tools, digital ENVDs, transfer of NLIS tags, through to sharing of data, through to sharing of performance information, through to the transaction, through to finance, through to insurance. How can you digitise the entire supply chain? And I think for me, in 10 years' time, looking back, for somebody working in the ag tech sector, there's going to be more and more of that digitisation 2.0.
Today's episode is brought to you by AgriCoach. You've worked bloody hard over the years and you've built a solid operation. But as your children grow up and start their own journeys, you're beginning to think about the next 5, 10, and even 15 years and how to keep driving the business forward and ensure a smooth and successful succession plan. Preparing the business, preparing the next generation, and preparing for your eventual retirement all requires a solid plan and a proven process. Unsure about the right steps to take? Head on over to agricoach.com.au/webinar to learn more about our Succession Proof Your Family webinar. AgriCoach, aligning families, growing wealth, and protecting legacies. And now, let's get back to the episode.
Well done. Thank you. I just want to clarify an opening remark of Ben's. I did sit on quite a few committees and boards, but I don't anymore. So some of the comments that I'm able to make tonight is because I don't have any ties, I don't have any affiliations, and I don't have to worry about the consequences from organisations tomorrow. I've only got to worry about bread rolls that might come from you guys tonight. So I just because I think a lot of people in industry today are compromised because of, you know, a supplier might take offence at what they've said, or a customer, or a industry organisation that they might be speaking against. So I just wanted to make that point. I want to support David absolutely that top of the pops for me is climate change. And regardless of what you as a producer might think about climate change, I don't think that matters. I think our consumer is certainly concerned about climate change, and we must, I think we've done a very bad job of giving our consumer permission to eat red meat. And I think as an industry, we must do that. There are a lot of people out there who are throwing stones at us, be they animal activists, be they plant-based food manufacturers who want to label it meat, spare me days, be they cell-based meat. There are a lot of, we've got a large anti-brigade out there, and we've got to be aware of that, and we've got to sell our message, and sadly we're not doing that, in my humble opinion. And the people who should be doing that are the organisations that I'm sure most of you are members of. These organisations do what their members demand, and too many members don't demand. It's up to you. We all make a difference when we vote for our governments. That's a God-given right. But for our industry bodies, I think the industry, things are great at the moment, so everybody's sitting back a little bit relaxed. I think that's a huge mistake. You need to bang the drum and say what you want. And I think we need to be, I repeat, giving our consumers permission to eat red meat, and I don't, as a city dweller myself, I don't believe those consumers have that permission today. Along a similar theme, 10 years' time, I would love to see in Australia without one wild pig. If we've got threats of disease knocking on our door, I can guarantee you the day after a disease arrives here, we'll be saying, oh gee, we better do something about our wild pigs because they're going to spread all our disease. Like, we've got to do that before the damn disease arrives. And again, I say, you've got to get your agri-political bodies to do something about it. It's fixable. I don't know, I'm no expert. I don't know whether they should be poisoned, shot, whether we should be paying pet food companies a subsidy to put more wild pig into... I don't know what the answers are, but we've been messing around the bloody edges of this issue for years and we've done nothing. And if we get a disease in this country tomorrow, wild pigs and goats are worth a bloody fortune. Why aren't they all behind wire? Mm-hmm. Any goat in this country that's not behind wire, get rid of it. Like, it's crazy. And the day after we've got a disease, it'll be on top of our list. But today, it should be, and it's not, and I think it's terribly wrong. Excuse me reading a note, but I read the other day that our Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek says that she wants the government to have 30% of the country's land by 2030, which is not far away, as national parks. Now that's going to take a lot of land out of food and fibre production. So I say to you, where is the world's food going to come from when all this carbon sequestration, which has got to happen, but I think that means we'll have a reduction in food and fibre availability. So livestock prices have got to go up, land prices, because we'll have less land to produce the food as the world's population keeps on growing. So I say to you, where is the food going to come from? It's all very well to say all the climate change issues that we've got and we've got to stop this, but people have still got to eat. And I think one thing that governments haven't realised is when people get hungry around the world, they get very restless. Food is terribly, terribly important, and I think that's being ignored today. Sorry if I'm over time. Thanks, Ben.
So I think the problem there is it was a great message, but we didn't employ our cattle prodder wielder at 2 minutes, did we? And just to confirm on that, Richard, I agree. I did a column in the Queensland Country Life recently, and also a podcast with the Beef Sustainability Framework, and talking about, is agriculture being painted as the hero or the villain? And in many cases it's the villain, so which needs to be addressed. So now we've used up 14 minutes of our 45 minutes, so which is good. We don't mind that. So David, I'm going to start with you now. Now, I thought about this question a lot, and I thought, like most success stories, you started off selling a small number of bulls, you and Prue, and then you built up the business to getting just over 1,000 bulls a year you were selling, which anyone here in the room would suggest is a no mean feat. So you must have been doing just a couple of things right. And one of those we talked about was collaboration, which was one of the principles I mentioned earlier. Now, if you've got collaboration or building relationships and working together, if you've got a bull buyer and a bull seller working closely together, it's obvious the value for the bull seller in the sense that they sell more bulls, don't they? Which is what happened. So my question to you, it's obvious to the bull seller what the value is. What's the value for the bull buyer in collaborating closely with the seed stock producers?
Thanks, Ben. And look, it is a great question, and you mentioned Prue and myself. Prue's on an aeroplane that's running half an hour late, so she's luckily for me she'll get here after all this is over. The seed stock business for us was first and foremost a people business. Yes, we had purebred cattle and we sold bulls, but it was absolutely a people business. It's a sales business, and certainly people were at the forefront, whether they be suppliers, cooperators, clients, whoever in the industry. So our business was all about people, built on people, respect for people, and collaboration with people. So you talked about, the question was about collaboration, and look, for commercial beef producers, they've got a whole lot of collaborators in their business that make their business function, whether it be bankers and agronomists and so forth. There's so many people that assist that, but one of the biggest inputs into a commercial beef herd is the genetic component. So probably the person or the people that they need to work most closely with is the people that supply their genetics, their bulls or their replacement females, and so I guess that's where the space that we operated in, and we knew the importance of having that really, really good relationship with our customers, which were commercial cattle breeders, and that two-way conversation. So, and that developed, that really good two-way conversation back and forth between us and our clients, developed a lot of trust, integrity, open conversation, and certainly some honesty and in amongst all that. So that made our business more, I guess it laid it bare, but it also exposed anything else that we had to give. We certainly gave it as much as we could to our clients. And I've been a seed stock producer all my life, both in purebred sheep, stud sheep, and cattle. And I guess when we look forward as a business that was Palgrove, we quite often use the term called reverse engineering. And if we looked at something that was different, or we wanted to change something or tweak something, we always went to where we were trying to head and worked our way backwards from there. And that was the only, rather than starting small and doing little pieces of a jigsaw, we looked at where we were trying to head and then come back and fit the pieces in on the way back. So and that's the beef supply chain. It's whatever we were doing at the time. That's how we looked at every problem, and we had most of our family meetings, team meetings were all about where do we start to eat this elephant that we try to create. In my mind, there are probably too many seed stock producers that probably don't listen to their clients. for whatever reason, they're more telling them what they may need rather than listen to them hearing what they might want and what can I do to help you with that. And it's not a God-given right, certainly, to be a sea stock producer, but I guess it may be perceived by some that it is. So, and a classic example of that, and again speaking from a sea stock producer's angle, is a week out from a bull sale, someone receiving a calls and telling him how good his sale bulls are next week, and are you coming along? The answer is I've actually already bought my bulls this year, but thanks for the call. Just a total breakdown in two-way communication. He what happened in the other 11 and a half months of that year that he didn't hear boo from anyone. Why did he buy genetics from someone else? All those things that shouldn't have happened if there was really good collaboration between that commercial producer and someone that they may have purchased genetics and bulls from. So I think an example of collaboration working is when we would get calls from someone saying, I know your bull sales next week, I can't go, mother-in-law's having a hernia operation or whatever, and so I can't be there. But look, you've been to our farm, you know what we do, you know our country, you've seen our cow herd, you know who we sell to, what we sell. I want 6 bulls, you buy them whatever they're worth, and let me know how you get on. And that made our business. It was our business. So many people trusted our integrity and what we did, and because we put people first before anything, and then the rest fell into place after that. So I guess it's just bang on, but collaboration for a commercial beef producer with their genetic supplier or a seed stock producer is a two-way conversation, and it is certainly, that's how a business grows. It's very easy to sell the first bull to someone. It's a lot more difficult to sell the second and the third and the 100th, and that's the business that you dream about, but that's the hard work and the grind and everything you have to do to get that business. So I guess that's hopefully I'll come in well under time to give you before we get to Richard.
Not quite.
Not quite. Okay.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Can I get that back?
No, wrong one.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Look, I in my previous life as a financial advisor, I spent 20 years doing it, and I had a lot of clients up into far north Queensland and the Territory, and they were large cattle stations, and that's what they talked about, David, was being able to ring up the bull genetics providers and say, we need a B-double or a road train full of bulls, and they just turn up as they go, and they'd built a lot of trust over that time, and they knew what they were getting, and they were able to go back and say, look, this didn't quite work out the way I wanted it. What are we going to do to fix it? So, I think that's some great. Now, Angus, Jeff and I were recently having this conversation. He said something to me which really resonated, and he said, the pace of change has never been this fast in agriculture, and it will never be this slow again. And so I want to say that again. So the pace of change has never been this fast, and it'll never be this slow again. And I think if you think about that, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of potential in that realisation that the world is changing quickly, it's going to change quicker, and we need to keep on top of that. So as someone who is neck deep in the technology space, which is, moving far quicker than the agricultural space, how do you see this rate of change providing an opportunity, or, there's potential for commercial breeders in the future?
Good question. And I was sitting there this afternoon reflecting on it myself, and I thought how best to answer it, because there's lots of kind of ways you could lean into the question. And I thought a good way for me to dissect it was to actually reflect and go, what has driven the pace of change, or what is driving the pace of change currently in the livestock sector? And for me, I put it down to three kind of key components. The first component is connectivity. I go back. I'm not saying it's great and it's perfect, but I'm saying that there is the opportunity for it to be better, and we are starting to see elements of that now. A great example of it is Elon Musk has launched Starlinks into Australia. They are cost-effective satellite dishes which do not operate on the current Telstra or the current networks, and they have a direct access to the satellite. That connectivity is starting to open up the opportunities for change. I've sat on an advisory panel for the Smart CRC, and there was some extremely smart people around the table, and consistently the feedback was, we want quality, fast access to data, and if we can do that, the farm can transform. And I think for me, there's glimpses of it, but the more that we can connect the farm, so you hear around the Internet of Things or the farm of things, the number of widgets, the gadgets, the trough monitors, the tank monitors, the Bluetooth networks, they're all wonderful widgets and gadgets, but until there is connectivity that is reliable, the farm is going to struggle to evolve. But I think what's exciting, and so that piece is the slow rate of change, but I think if we can get the connectivity right, it's tenfold for commercial livestock producers. The second piece is what I call the COVID era. And the COVID era, for me, I define in two aspects. The first aspect is COVID aligned with wonderful seasons. It rained in March 2020. I think COVID was announced by ScoMo, end of March. And it was the perfect storm for the agricultural sector to start to adopt technologies. There was positive mindset in the community after some really tough years in drought. Yet there was this need to stay connected, to engage, and to use different forms of communication. Those forms of communication were digital communication. That would then start to push you into, well, I'm using the laptop more, I'm using the iPhone more, I'm going to start to download more apps, I'm going to start to download more software, podcasts, exactly. So all of a sudden, people were tuning into webinars, were downloading software apps, farm management tools, data decision-making tools. The access and the information around the digital ag tech solutions, the adoption of that, and I guess our view on it as a business is that COVID and the good season, so the COVID era, we believe reduced the adoption of ag tech from around 7 years to 3 to 5 in some specific segments. And I think that momentum is only going to continue because there's now an expectation from farmers who have good connectivity to have tools and applications and software and hardware that works and is making my business more profitable and more productive. So that's the COVID era. The second piece links to that, and I would say is a cultural change. That cultural change is a mindset from commercial livestock producers realising the data that they've been capturing for 5 years is extremely rich, and there's huge opportunities to draw on insights and information from that data, which is going to help me make better decisions. So I think there's a mindset shift. There used to be the early adopters. Auctions Plus has been around for 37 years. It's toiled in the ag tech space for that long, and it's been those early adopters like Prue and David who have been using it, and many other producers that have adopted it and stuck with it. Now there is mass using, not just Octopus Plus, but using digital tools. So there's a cultural shift, and a large portion of commercial livestock producers, not just the early adopters, are driving that cultural change. So it's a really, really exciting time to be in the agricultural sector, because that rate of change is constant. And I think producers have realised that time in some form is finite. I'm only alive for a certain number of days. I can only do so much with the hours that I've got in the day. But change is constant. So I actually have to stay up to date. And what are those tools and applications that keep me up to date and make me better?
That's a great answer. and I think I talked to my wife about this one when we were coming up with the question, and she's an engineer, a computer systems engineer, and she said something to me, Angus. She said, I also think it'll accelerate the change because we learn from our parents, and we've now got generations coming through where people are using technology so closely, the kids coming through behind them are learning it off mum and dad, and that's just so simple and easy for them, and then the next generation will come through, and I think that also accelerates the change. So now, Richard, I'm looking forward to this. Is everyone looking forward to this? Is everyone? So, no, Richard.
No.
Yep. I put the timer on. I love listening to Richard. I'm joking around. Now, anyone that's met you, Richard, will know you're a relationship man through and through. And I'm going to guess that a lot of your success in the Exporting Co was all about relationships and collaborating closely with the people that work for you, your supply chain operators. Now, the question I've got is collaboration or collaborating with people through building close relationships with your customers or supply chains an old-fashioned idea now that technology is starting to take over the world?
Good one. Thanks. Ben, I think you've only got to look in the room tonight to get that answer. This is about collaboration and relationships, and with all due respect to Angus, these bulls and heifers aren't all going to be sold online tomorrow. You need people here to see them, touch them, feel them, and you need relationships. And that was absolutely how I built my business. I grew up, in the bush. I didn't ever have any formal training as to how to create relationships. It's just something that came with time, I suppose. The most important part for me was my team. I had the most unbelievable team, and I'd like to think it was because I made it fun to be there. It really was an enjoyable place. I didn't lose a person that I didn't want to from my team, and that's a pretty extraordinary thing to be able to say, I think. But I might have been the captain of the team, but everybody else wanted to be there and wanted to work hard and succeed and for the common good. So my team was the most important part of my business, without any shadow of a doubt. The second comment that I would like to make, that I'm just gobsmacked by the number of people that think their banker is their enemy. I brought my banker in as absolutely part of my business and created a relationship with them, because reality is I had to have lots of things, lots of guarantees in place to be able to get the money that I needed to operate. And in the end of my career, I was turning over 500 million a year, so I used a fair bit of money. So, and without my bankers, I couldn't have done $1 of that. So having a bank on side was paramount. As I said to my bankers, before I've lost $1 of my money, before I lose $1 of your money, I've lost all of mine. And I've got no intention of losing any of mine. So, and it was very interesting. After I retired in 2013, one of my bank managers, who I developed a very close relationship with, he said, I want you to know we actually bank the person before we bank the business. And he said, we had so much faith in you that you knew where every dollar in your business was, and you were so focused on protecting that dollar that we had absolute confidence that you would never lose a dollar of ours. So I can't stress strongly enough the point of creating a relationship with your banker. Number of people that say, oh, I don't want to tell that bugger anything, keep him out of my business. It's just not the way it is. If you need outside money, you must have a relationship with your bank. Every 2 or 3 years, I had 3 banks, and every 2 or 3 years, I would get them together and charter a little plane, and we'd run around to one of the abattoirs that I might have been dealing with, or a feedlot, and we'd go and have a nice dinner, maybe a game of golf, a couple of beers. But getting those 3 different banks together and getting them away, nobody else in business was doing that with their bankers, and they absolutely relished that, and we created a relationship where I always had more money available to our business than we knew what to do with, and that's a pretty special place to be. McDonald's, as Ben said, I convinced McDonald's USA to buy the first imported meat that they had always had the slogan, the All-American Burger. They had always used US domestic beef only, but I managed to convince them over a 10-year period. It was a long, challenging road to get McDonald's to change course, take that slogan out of their burger. It's not the All-American Burger, but they were only buying fresh beef, which meant that they were buying this week what they were getting next week, and they didn't know what was happening in the future, whereas with us they could buy it frozen. I'd sell it to them 3 months forward, which they loved, and it gave them a guarantee of price, and so that, we all might laugh about McDonald's, but the cold hard facts are they are the largest users of protein in the world. Yes, it might be trimmings, but every beef carcass has trimmings. And if you're not selling the whole carcass, you haven't got much of a business. So McDonald's were a mightily important customer, but it was all because of a relationship that I created with an individual that got me access into McDonald's. That's McDonald's hamburgers. The other McDonald that was pretty important in my life was a McDonald family that owned the abattoir at Inverell. 1,200 cattle a day, at least 5 days a week, often 6. They bought that in 1995, and I took every pound of meat and offal out of that abattoir from 1995 till 2013 when I retired. And the reason I raised that was a gentleman's agreement that I had with J.R. McDonald. We never signed a contract. We never had an official agreement. It was a handshake. Either of us could have walked away from the relationship the next day, but we had the trust in each other that whilst ever we were both doing the right thing, we would look after each other, and we did. That's relationships for mine, and without that, I'm not sure what it is. So thanks for the opportunity. There are a few things that are pretty dear to my heart, and relationships were what it was all about. Thanks for the opportunity, Ben.
Well, that was fantastic. And I know, Richard, in my business, I ran it for 20 years, and I used to always say trust is the most important thing. And trust is usually built not because you're honest, it's because you say you do what you say you'll do. Yeah. And I think that would have been very a clear understanding you had between the abattoir and yourself, that when you said something, you meant it. Yeah. And you followed through on it. Yeah. Okay. David.
Ben.
Now, this is going to go back to this first question a little bit again, so we might get a little bit of overlap, but as you said, there's a lot of opportunity in the beef industry now, but there's also a lot of problems we're seeing, and Richard touched on a few of those with the environmental side. We've got, you mentioned the FMD, etc. So there are a lot of challenges and headwinds. So what do you see commercial producers need to be doing or focusing on over the next 10 years to be successful?
Thank you, Ben, and that's a very good question. But if I paint the background, and I think the overarching fact is in the next 10 years that, and I'd said it before, and Richard said it as well, that environmental footprint that were accused of not managing well, that will be, controlling that is how we manage that will affect the success of what we do. Basically our licence to operate, and so the successful producer, the commercial producer, will be one that does that really well, is aware of the environment, aware of things around them, aware of what the consumers and everyone who may or may not have the right understanding of what we do. There's so that social awareness of what producers do will keep becoming more and more prominent, and so just ethical practices and sustainable production will be the norm. In 10 years' time, it'll be certainly, and again, the spotlight will be on animal production more than we're seeing now. That'll continue. Be it some ignorance maybe coming from people outside the agricultural sector, but it's very real, and we can't turn a blind eye on it. We have to address it and be open with our communication and media to the greater population, so our story's told. But talking about what will it take, what will a successful commercial producer, beef producer, what will he have to do in the next 10 years and challenges? So, Bull sheep, yeah, certainly red meat producer. Certainly, improving efficiencies is one. We're getting squeezed now, but we need to think how do we keep remaining profitable, and that is by being more efficient, manage our keep a check on our cost of production. From my point of view, it's using genetics that will be produce a higher value, a higher quality, a more marketable type product, using genetics that will get there faster, more kilos of beef per hectare in a shorter time frame, and with potentially less animals, more efficient animals. It's weeding out those non-performers. The successful commercial operator, every animal burps and farts, and we're under the spotlight for I believe wrongly so, but because cattle are ruining the world with methane production. So let's only keep those profitable animals and take out the non-performers. So the commercial beef producer in 10 years' time will be really technology savvy. They will work a lot smarter. They'll still work hard, but they'll certainly work smarter. They'll be well informed. They'll know their markets. They will have a breeding system or a business that supplies into more than one, has a capability of supplying more than one market. They won't be going down a rabbit burrow that then the lights are turned out. So they'll have flexibility in their operations. They'll be thinking about that. They will be not just be well informed. They'll be certainly adopters of technology. If there's technology there in whatever space it is in livestock production, they'll be early adopters of that, and they'll be innovators and leaders. The successful people won't be the wait and see what happens and maybe adopt it. They'll be the people who the early adopters that'll be the successful ones. And so that's a really brief summary of people that I would consider that are going to be successful commercial breeders. I think a motherhood statement, but one that's really sound is the really successful producer will be one that is passionate about the red meat industry, and they'll never work a day in their life because they love what they're doing. And I think that's to take the passion out of this industry and replace it purely by technology is not right. It's a mix of both, and the successful people will be the ones that are really passionate about what and how they do things. So that's basically a very broad answer. But, yeah.
That's okay. Normally with a podcast, they usually go for 45 minutes, and I usually have one person to ask questions for, so you've done really well to be concise. And just to dovetail back into that, I agree with the whole, the point about what you can measure, you can manage, and I do believe myself that tying into what Angus said about technology changing, data is going to be more important. I think we're going to see a lot more around efficiency, tracking what you're actually doing and using that technology for better purposes. It won't just, as you said, wait and see what happens. Yeah. So, Angus, excellent. Okay, so now when you send cattle to the sale yards or maybe to a feedlot, you've got some control over the price, but essentially you're a price taker, aren't you? Because you've only got a small number of buyers. Now, you don't always get the true value of what your cattle are actually worth at that time, and quite often a lot of value is left on the table for producers. Now, I'm sure you'll agree that Auctions Plus is more than just, and selling online is more than just another place to sell your cattle. So from your point of view and seeing things the way you do, what do you see as the true value for producers to using platforms and technology like online, like say an Auction Plus?
Thanks, Ben. I think what's important when we talk about technology, and both David and Richard have mentioned it, and being the young kid on the block, I want to clarify what I mean by technology. I think technology in ag tech is not around disrupting the relationships and the trust that is the fabric of the ag sector. What it is around enabling better systems and processes. So I think how for an ag tech company to be successful, it's not the be all and the end all. It's an enabler. Is it adding additional value? From an Auctions Plus perspective, you hit the nail on the head. In the short term, the value of selling online is firstly price discovery. You maximise your awareness and the number of bidders that are online, and secondly, you're in complete control. It is one of the channels where you get both of those key components of a transaction from the sell side, not from the buy side. Where I think you're angling is the discretionary value, which is kind of the net gains which aren't truly recognised just yet. But both what David and Richard have talked to are going to have to become recognised over the next 10 years. And that's things like biosecurity, animal welfare, reputation, brand and data. When you think around selling livestock as a commercial producer, the expectations placed upon you from consumers, from the processors, there's going to be expectations around animal welfare. And are you handling and transacting the animals in the best possible way? Biosecurity is a hot topic at the moment. What is the safest way to transact livestock that reduces the biosecurity risks, paddock to paddock or direct to direct? So how do you maximise your price discovery, stay in control, but also minimise your biosecurity risks? So the third is reputation. That links to a saying which we say internally here, and that is the handshake that you had in the paddock is amplified when you're selling online. It is your name, your brand, your trading company up in lights. You can't hide from a transaction, and your reputation is not just the pocket that you live in, it is suddenly your reputation is on display nationally. And I think for those commercial producers that realise that your digital reputation is an extremely powerful tool to the tool belt, they're the ones that are going to stand out from those that are just thinking of the localisation. The fourth bit is brand. And I talk brand not in the fluffy kind of marketing brand perspective, I talk brand in justifiable brand values. So as a commercial producer, that you have verified, traits that set you apart from your commercial operation. And I think the seed stock sector has done that extremely well. I think the processing and the feedlot and the seed stock sector has done that extremely well in how they have diversified and created brands. And it's not around creating more brands to sell into consumers. What it's around is, can you verify your on-farm practices, and can they then be used by the supply chain and supported to meet the demands that the consumers are expecting. The supply chain needs to work together from a verifiable perspective. And then the fifth is data. There's thousands of animals that are being transacted every day, yet the data is not necessarily being transferred. So there's all this on-farm data that is being captured. Surely there's an opportunity for that on-farm data to be shared to the purchase and then used and then paid it forward and then linked back from a feedback loop perspective. So I think it's those discretionary value points that, from a commercial producer perspective, if they can grab them and lean into them, that's where the opportunity lies.
Excellent. Thanks, Angus. I think we're going to see a lot of changes over the next 10 years in that space for sure. I think you might have even said to me when we first started talking was about there's a lot of data or a lot of information back in the farm office in the filing cabinet that doesn't go to the sale yards with you. And quite often that stuff can be put online and can change the price that you're actually getting for positive reasons. Okay, Richard. Now, in Australia, we consume, and you corrected my numbers the other day, thank you very much for that. I would have embarrassed myself, everyone, but we consume about 30% of the beef we produce. So in essence, we're our own biggest marketplace, aren't we?
Correct.
But the per capita consumption of beef has been slowly declining over the last number of years. So each person in Australia is consuming less beef. Now, that can be for a number of reasons. We're losing market share to other forms of protein. It could be the fact that we mentioned before about there's many politicians, environmentalists, activists, demanding some of them saying we should completely stop producing beef altogether because it's evil and bad for the environment, etc. But there's also, just some of those pressures that are coming through. So from your point of view, do you think we're at risk of Australian consumers starting to fall out of love with beef? And if they are, how do we stop that?
Thanks, Ben. Really important subject, I think, and I want to... It frustrates me no end that we continue to talk about consumption of red meat in this country in kilo forms, in kilos consumed. What a nonsense. Why aren't we talking about value of meat consumed? If people are stopping eating mince and eating half as much eye fillet, aren't we in a better place? Let's focus on the value add and let's talk about the dollars that are spent rather than the volume. I think we'd all produce less cattle if we could get twice as much money for them, if you know what I mean. So let's focus on the value. To that end, Australia is the biggest market for Australian meat. 30% is consumed at home. No other country takes 30% of our production. Of that 30% that's consumed at home, 70% of that is sold through supermarkets. And supermarkets today don't want to promote a beef brand. They want to do their own thing. Yet they do have Coke and they do have Colgate and they do have Sorbent, so they are prepared to sell brands if the consumer has a brand that they want to demand that they buy from the supermarket. So I put to you that we must be developing beef brands. I think Cape Grim have done an outstanding job talking locally. Jacks Creek doing an unbelievable job, but there aren't many others who are promoting a brand. So just let me take you down this path. I'll challenge you anyone to tell me any other non-agricultural product that is marketed generically. You know, there is no beer organisation that says we should drink beer. That's left up to VB or Forex, whatever the case. There's no motor car organisation that says buy more motor cars. That's left up to Ford or Toyota. Yet in the beef industry, and I'm not having a shot at MLA here, I think the MLA do a terrific job, but the MLA do what its members demand of them. And I believe that the MLA should be asked to stop marketing beef as such, leave it up to brands. We've now got grading systems so brands can be absolutely consistent. But every other industry, every other product outside of agriculture has a brand. And in the beef industry, in this country, we don't. We do in the box that it comes in, and then we steak it, dice it, slice it, whatever we do to it, and it loses its identity. We must create more stronger brands that the retailer will demand, is my suggestion. But I repeat, it's up to the members of these organisations to make those demands, because that's how these organisations react. Another quick thing that I'd like to say is a great mate of mine, Edward Throsby. I'm sure most of you know Edward, has the abattoir at Singleton and another one at Young. He says that that the red meat industry is a broken business model, and I must absolutely agree with him, because when the processor is making a good quid, that's normally when there's a bad drought with the producers on their knees. They've got to sell, they've got to take whatever money is offered. Bad luck. Vice versa, when there's a good season and the producer wants to restock, the processor can't afford the money, the processor's on his knees, and can I say, neither really gives too much of a damn about the other, I don't think. I think it's just a really sad relationship, and I think I absolutely agree with Edward that we've got a broken business model and that needs fixing. I don't believe that Toyota would want to screw Dunlop every day for their tyres or whatever the case might be. We've got to be able to operate in harmony, and to that end I say that we need forward pricing. I think we need fixed prices forward that a producer can sell to. And if the producer knows that his cost of production is $1 and he can sell forward 12 months at $1.20, why wouldn't he? You know, if the market goes to $1.30, he's not losing money, he's losing opportunity. When I sold all that meat to McDonald's for those years, they would have given their right tooth to me to be able to sell them meat 12 months forward. Because as McDonald's always said, they don't change the price of a Big Mac just because it's wet in Texas or dry in Australia. They fix a price and they have to buy their raw material to meet that price. Yet I could not find an abattoir that would supply me further forward than maybe 3 months, because they couldn't find a producer who would guarantee a price to them further forward than probably 3 months. I know we've all got seasonal constraints and things change. I accept all that, but I think producers and processors need to get a whole lot closer together, work together for the benefit of both parties, and there's plenty of mechanisms where prices can be changed somewhat if markets move, but I really encourage producers and processors to think hard about creating relationships and getting forward prices. Last point I want to make here, Ben, and I just need to read a quote from a recent one from a bank, HSBC, and they say the numbers are striking. We've heard about population increase. I'm not so much interested in population increase as I am the fact that those consumers are affluent. So HSBC say the numbers are striking. We estimate there are set to be more than 500 million more middle and higher income consumers globally by the time we get to 2030. That's not far away. 500 million more in middle and higher income. By 2040, it's likely to be another 500 million. Within the next 20 years, That's more than 1 billion more people with considerable spending power than there are today, a 44% increase, almost entirely in markets that today are classed as lower income. For mine, the future looks incredibly bright. Thank you.
What a great way to finish it. Look at that. I knew you'd deliver. Look at that. So that's it for us tonight. I know we're between you and the bar and dinner, so I'm very conscious that we need to wrap this up quick smart. And I just want to say thanks to David, Angus and Richard. I've had the benefit of chatting with these guys after the last little while, and I can say they're a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you coming along tonight and sharing some of those thoughts. I think everyone here and online would have got some great insights themselves, so thank you very much.